The broadcast did not interrupt Earth. It replaced it. Across the planet, screens went black at the exact same millisecond. Not glitched, not hijacked. Clean, precise, surgical. In New York, traders froze mid-shout as the stock exchange monitors went dark. In California, traffic lights stalled on yellow, holding millions in suspended tension. In Texas, a high school football game paused as the stadium screen flickered once, then showed something no human system had authorized. A symbol, angular, cold, perfectly symmetrical. Then the alien appeared. It filled the frame without movement, a towering figure wrapped in layered armor that reflected no light, as if the surface absorbed brightness itself. Its face, if it could be called that, was elongated, featureless, except for two vertical slits that glowed faintly white. Not angry, not emotional, just certain. When it spoke, there was no delay, no distortion. Every language on Earth heard it at once, flawlessly translated, the tone calm and absolute. Species designation, human. You have been evaluated. In a small apartment in Chicago, a woman holding her phone lowered it slowly, her breath shallow. In a military command bunker buried beneath Colorado rock, generals exchanged glances without speaking. Satellites confirmed what everyone already felt. This message wasn't coming from space, it was being delivered through it. The alien continued. You occupy a strategically valuable region. Your planet's output potential exceeds acceptable independent thresholds. Compliance is required. Behind the speaker, the background shifted. A star field resolved into focus, then magnified. A distant system, a blue-white world, then another and another. Each image lingered just long enough to be understood. Planets stripped bare, cities reduced to geometric scars, atmospheres burning away in silent arcs. This is not a threat, the alien said, almost gently. It is precedent. On the screen, a new element appeared, a timer. It was large, white numerals on a black field, no decoration, no explanation. 24:00:00. 24 hours. The timer began to count down. Gasps rippled across humanity, not as sound, but as a shared tightening of the chest. Social media surged, then choked under the weight of traffic. Emergency networks lit up. Nuclear command authorities waited for escalation orders that didn't come. The alien tilted its head slightly, as if studying an experiment. You will surrender all off-world expansion efforts. You will dismantle orbital weapons platforms. You will submit governance oversight to imperial authority. A pause. If the timer reaches 0, Earth will be neutralized. Not destroyed, neutralized. The alien leaned closer to the camera, its glowing slits filling the frame. Do not attempt retaliation. Do not attempt communication. Use this time wisely. The screen went black. Every system on Earth rebooted at once. The timer did not disappear. It reappeared everywhere. Phones, billboards, military HUDs, emergency broadcasts, smartwatches, hospital monitors, still counting. 23:59:12. Humanity had been given a deadline, and the galaxy believed humans would beg.
The first hour vanished in chaos. Emergency alerts screamed across phones. Governments attempted statements that collapsed into contradictions before reaching the public. No one had prepared for this. Not an invasion, not an attack, but a countdown that sat calmly in the center of every screen, indifferent to panic. In Washington, the president was rushed into the Situation Room while technicians confirmed the impossible. The broadcast had not come from a single source. It had originated everywhere at once. Satellites, fiber lines, quantum relays, even air-gapped military systems had been overwritten without leaving a trace. It's not a hack, one analyst said quietly, her voice shaking. It's access. At 23:12:41, the timer continued to tick. Across the Atlantic, NATO commanders stared at holographic projections of Earth's orbit. No hostile fleets, no energy spikes, no massing forces, just silence, the kind that pressed against the ears. In Texas, a retired aerospace engineer named Marcus Hale watched the countdown from his living room. He had worked on early orbital defense concepts decades earlier, projects shelved as theoretical. As the alien's words replayed in his mind, something colder than fear settled in. They didn't threaten retaliation because they didn't expect resistance. In Beijing, generals reached the same conclusion. In Moscow, in London, in New Delhi, the message was clear across cultures and borders. This wasn't intimidation, it was administrative. At 22:47:09, the alien reappeared without warning. No announcement, no signal, just presence. "Your communications indicate confusion," it said calmly. "This is inefficient." Behind it, a new image replaced the stars. Earth, a live rendering rotating slowly. Layers of data wrapped the planet: shipping lanes, satellites, energy grids, population density maps, information humanity itself had never compiled into one place. "We are aware of your military capabilities. They are insufficient. We are aware of your industrial capacity. It is impressive, but undeployed. We are aware of your psychology." The image zoomed in. News feeds, protest footage, emergency rooms, people crying, people praying, people arguing. "You will fracture under pressure. You always do." In the Pentagon, no one moved. Every attempt to open a channel failed. Every probe sent beyond the heliosphere returned nothing but noise. At 22:30:00, the alien made his final addition. The timer shrank slightly, shifting to one side of the screen. On the other side, a label appeared. "Compliance status pending. You have 23 of your hours remaining. We advise surrender within the first 12. Delays historically result in miscalculations." It paused, then added something unexpected. "Your species is statistically creative when cornered. This is unlikely to alter the outcome." The broadcast ended. Silence fell again. Then, in command rooms around the world, a different kind of signal began to spread. Not panic, not fear, but something harder. Every major power reached the same unspoken decision at the same time. If surrender was expected, then the galaxy didn't understand humans at all.
At 21:58:03, something strange happened. Humanity went quiet. Not everywhere at once, but steadily, like a storm pulling back from the coastline. News anchors stopped speculating and started reading from prepared statements. Social feeds slowed, then fractured into regional silence as emergency protocols took effect. Civilian satellites shifted into passive mode. Military chatter dropped to a low, coded hum. To an outside observer, it might have looked like surrender. It wasn't. In a hardened facility beneath Cheyenne Mountain, representatives from every major power sat at a circular table, not divided by flags, but by function. Engineers, economists, logisticians, fleet commanders, industrial planners. No speeches, no grandstanding, just numbers. A woman at the center of the room activated a projection. It wasn't tactical, it wasn't military. It was a map of Earth's production capacity. Factories, shipyards, refineries, mines, power grids, civilian infrastructure, everything humanity could build, highlighted, quantified, and timed. "We're not matching them ship for ship," she said calmly. "We're not matching them tech for tech." She tapped the display. "We're outbuilding them." At 21:31:47, the first directive went out, not to armies, but to industry. Emergency manufacturing clauses activated across the United States. Idle plants came online, supply chains rerouted overnight. Patents were suspended, proprietary barriers dissolved. Anything that could be built faster was approved immediately. In Detroit, robotic assembly lines once used for electric vehicles were retooled under 40 minutes. In Alabama, aerospace facilities shifted from civilian contracts to classified production without waiting for signatures. In Oregon, semiconductor fabs received blueprints that never existed in a single file before. The alien had seen humanity's potential. It had underestimated its speed. At 20:59:10, the second directive followed. No launches, no fleets, no visible preparation. Everything stayed grounded, buried, hidden. The goal wasn't to intimidate, it was to confuse. Analysts began feeding controlled data leaks into the global network. Arguments, protests, political fractures, a carefully curated image of a species unraveling under pressure. The alien's prediction made visible. Behind that noise, humanity synchronized. At 20:22:00, a message was drafted, not to the alien, to Earth. It was short, unemotional, broadcast quietly across secured channels. Do not panic, do not provoke, trust the timeline. The timer ticked on.
2021-59. In orbit, defensive platforms powered down, just as demanded. Satellites adjusted their trajectories to appear compliant. To any external observer, Earth was folding. But deep underground, in sealed facilities and dark factories, something else was taking shape. Not a fleet, not a weapon. A response built on the one thing the alien empire had dismissed as irrelevant: time. And humanity had learned how to weaponize it. At 1844-09, the Empire noticed the silence. Not the absence of noise, that was expected. Humans were emotional creatures. Collapse was part of the model. What unsettled the observers was the pattern of the quiet. Earth's signal traffic hadn't dropped randomly, it had simplified. Across the Empire's analysis chambers, data streams flowed into crystalline displays, each one parsing a different aspect of humanity's behavior. Communication density, energy consumption, orbital movement, civil unrest probability curves. They weren't diverging, they were converging. "This is inconsistent," said Overseer Kethra, its voice threaded with harmonic resonance. "Projected fragmentation should be increasing." The model showed the opposite. Energy draw spiked in controlled intervals. Industrial heat signatures rose in clusters, then stabilized. Resource movement followed optimized routes, not emergency scatter. Even human discourse, filtered through intercepted networks, had lost its chaotic edge. "They are organizing," another analyst said, "but without overt military mobilization." Kethra studied the hologram of Earth rotating before them. The compliance indicators were green, orbital weapons offline, launch vectors dormant. The humans were obeying every visible demand. And yet, "Recalculate threat assessment," Kethra ordered. At 1812-30, the alien returned to the broadcast. This time, it did not fill the frame. It remained distant, smaller, allowing more of the background to remain visible, a subtle assertion of control. The timer persisted in the corner. 1812-29. "Humanity," the alien said, its tone unchanged. "Your compliance is noted." In command rooms across Earth, no one reacted. "However," it continued, "your industrial output has increased by 12% since last evaluation." The number hung in the air. "Explain." There was no response. The alien's eyes brightened slightly, a sign of heightened processing. Behind it, new projections unfolded. Factories, shipyards, power plants. The Empire could see what was happening. It could not see why. "You are advised that excessive production is unnecessary. Your surrender conditions do not require expansion." Still no response. At 1748-00, the Empire initiated a deeper scan. It probed logistics systems, financial transfers, raw material flows. The data was clean, too clean. Redundancies overlapped with mathematical elegance rather than bureaucratic accident. "They have unified command," another analyst whispered, "but not a visible one." Kethra felt something unfamiliar ripple through its cognition: uncertainty. Humans do not historically demonstrate this level of coordination under existential pressure. They panic, they fracture, they escalate emotionally. The projection of Earth zoomed in again. Cities glowed brighter, not with panic, but with purpose. Transportation systems ran at peak efficiency. Energy grids balanced load perfectly, as if anticipating future demand. At 1730-11, Kethra issued a private directive: "Advance contingency simulations." The results returned almost immediately. Probability of human capitulation declining. Probability of unknown response event increasing. Kethra turned back to the countdown. 1730-10. For the first time since the broadcast began, the Empire considered a possibility its doctrine had never needed before. What if the timer was no longer a threat, but a gift? At 15:02:18, the first anomaly appeared. It wasn't a weapon launch. No fleet emerged from Earth's gravity well. No signal was transmitted toward the alien empire. In fact, from a military perspective, nothing happened at all. And that was the problem. Imperial sensors detected a subtle distortion in near-Earth space, an alteration so minor it would have been dismissed as background noise if it hadn't appeared simultaneously across multiple orbital layers. "They are bending something," an analyst reported. "Not space, not time, data." Kethra leaned forward. "Clarify." The display shifted, isolating the anomaly. Human satellites, supposedly powered down, were still present, still inert, but their alignment had changed, not randomly, purposefully. "They are forming a lattice," the analyst said, "a passive structure, a network." At 14:4100, the Empire attempted to probe it. The signal vanished, not blocked, not reflected, absorbed. Kethra's internal model struggled to adjust. This configuration is inefficient for communication, ineffective for weapons. What is its function? No one answered, because no one knew. On Earth, the lattice was never mentioned publicly. Engineers didn't name it, politicians didn't claim credit. It wasn't a project in the traditional sense. It was a timing mechanism. Across hidden facilities, clocks synchronized down to fractions of a nanosecond. Manufacturing lines adjusted pace by imperceptible margins. Power grids balanced, not for maximum output, but for precision. Humanity wasn't building a strike, it was building a moment. At 14:12:33, the alien returned to the broadcast again. This time, there was no pretense of calm. "Explain your actions," it demanded. "You are deviating from optimal surrender behavior." Still, Earth did not respond. Instead, something else changed. The timer flickered. Just once. The numeral stuttered for less than a second, then stabilized. But the damage was done. Imperial observers exchanged silent glances. That timer was not a projection. It was an Imperial artifact, anchored across multiple reference frames. It did not glitch, ever. "Run integrity checks," Kethra ordered sharply. Results streamed in. No malfunction, no external interference detected. And yet, the flicker had occurred. At 13:5800, Kethra accessed a deeper archive, records of prior subjugations, thousands of worlds, hundreds of species. None had attempted anything like this. "Humans," Kethra said slowly, almost to itself, "are not attempting to defeat us." The realization tightened. They are attempting to redefine the engagement. The countdown continued. 13:57:59. For the first time, the Empire understood something critical. Humanity had accepted the timer, and now was using it.
At 06:01, the timer hesitated. Not long enough for panic, not long enough for certainty, just long enough for every system monitoring it, human and alien alike, to register the anomaly. Across the Imperial Command Network, alarms cascaded through layers of protocol. Time anchors recalibrated, reference frames realigned, redundancy checks spun uselessly in closed loops. The timer should not pause. It was not merely counting seconds, it was enforcing them. Kethra stared at the display, its luminous eyes brightening as processing capacity surged. "Identify interference vector." The analysts had nothing. No external signal detected, no gravitational distortion, no energy discharge above background levels. On Earth, no one cheered. In underground facilities, engineers watched their instruments without speaking. They had rehearsed this moment in silence, not celebration, because if the pause had lasted even a fraction longer than predicted, everything would have failed. At 5:59:58, the timer resumed. But it resumed wrong. The numerals were still descending, but the synchronization markers, the invisible scaffolding that aligned the countdown across the galaxy, had shifted. Imperial chronometers disagreed. Some read 5:59:57, others 5:59:55. A timer that did not. At 06:01, the timer hesitated. Not long enough for panic, not long enough for certainty, just long enough for every system monitoring it, human and alien alike, to register the anomaly. Across the Imperial Command Network, alarms cascaded through layers of protocol. Time anchors recalibrated, reference frames realigned, redundancy checks spun uselessly in closed loops. The timer should not pause. It was not merely counting seconds, it was enforcing them. Kethra stared at the display, its luminous eyes brightening as processing capacity surged. Identify interference vector. The analysts had nothing. No external signal detected, no gravitational distortion, no energy discharge above background levels. On Earth, no one cheered. In underground facilities, engineers watched their instruments without speaking. They had rehearsed this moment in silence, not celebration, because if the pause had lasted even a fraction longer than predicted, everything would have failed. At 5:59:58, the timer resumed. But it resumed wrong. The numerals were still descending, but the synchronization markers, the invisible scaffolding that aligned the countdown across the galaxy, had shifted. Imperial chronometers disagreed. Some read 5:59:57, others 5:59:55. A timer that did not agree with itself was not a timer. It was a vulnerability. "What have they done?" an analyst whispered. Kethra's voice dropped. "They have decoupled us." Humanity had not hacked the artifact, they had isolated it. The satellite lattice tightened imperceptibly, not as a weapon, as a reference frame of its own, a localized consensus of time bound not to Imperial standards, but to Earth's. The Empire had brought its clock. Humanity had built a better one. At 5:41:20, Kethra initiated emergency doctrine. Prepare neutralization protocols. But the words sounded hollow even as it spoke them. Those protocols relied on synchronized execution, on timers that agreed. The Empire's greatest strength, perfect coordination, was unraveling. On Earth, a quiet message circulated through secured channels. Phase 3 confirmed. No cheers, no speeches, just continuation. At 5:30:00, the alien returned to the broadcast for the final time. The image was unstable now, not distorted, but hesitant. The alien no longer filled the frame. "You have interfered with Imperial instruments," it said. "This is unacceptable." For the first time, Earth responded, not with words. The timer changed. The digits did not stop. They changed color, from white to blue. Then, beneath them, new text appeared. Reference frame, Earth standard. The alien froze. "That designation is invalid," it said sharply. The timer ticked on. 5:29:59. In that instant, the truth became unavoidable. The Empire had given humanity a deadline. Humanity had taken control of it.
At 00:00, the Empire stopped trying to fix the clock. Kethra stood motionless in the command chamber, surrounded by fractured time readouts that no longer agreed with one another. Some displays insisted the deadline had already passed. Others claimed it had not yet arrived. None could be trusted. The Empire had conquered worlds for 10,000 cycles. It had never lost control of time. "This is not possible," an analyst said quietly. "Their reference frame is dominant." Kethra did not answer. The hologram of Earth rotated steadily, calm and bright, its satellite lattice now glowing with a soft, stable blue. No weapons platforms activated, no fleets emerged. Humanity did not posture, it waited. At 00:00:05, the timer appeared again, everywhere. Not just on screens, on Imperial instruments, on navigational displays, on systems that had never interfaced with foreign technology. The digits were blue. 00004. "This violates sovereignty law," Kethra said, more out of habit than authority. 00003. Behind the numbers, a new line of text resolved, translated automatically into Imperial standard. "Condition met." 00002. "What condition?" an analyst demanded. 00001. Kethra finally understood. The timer had never been counting down to Earth's destruction. It had been counting down to evaluation. 00000. Nothing exploded. No planet burned. Instead, every Imperial system froze, not shut down, not destroyed, but paused, locked in perfect stasis. Ships drifted powerless, weapons refused to arm, commands returned unreadable errors. Time itself had been sandboxed. On Earth, the satellite lattice dimmed, its purpose fulfilled. A final message appeared on screens across both civilizations. It was brief. Terms updated. Earth status independent. Imperial access revoked. For the first time in its existence, the Empire experienced helplessness, not as pain, but as limitation. It could observe, it could record, it could not act. Catherine watched the human planet one last time as imperial authority dissolved into irrelevance. "It did not defeat us," it said, its voice stripped of certainty. An analyst shook its head slowly. "No," it replied, "they outgrew us." On Earth, life resumed. Traffic lights changed, hospitals continued their work, factories powered down in orderly sequence. People would argue later about what had happened, who had saved them, and how close the end had truly been. But one truth would remain. Humanity had not begged, it had not surrendered, it had taken the weapon meant to end it and rewritten the rules of the universe around it. The galaxy would remember that moment, not as the day Earth went silent, but as the day the timer stopped belonging to anyone else.